Hello and welcome back to another roller coaster POV judging video. Oh god. Anyway, today I'm going to be judging the POV of Wood Coaster. Insert funny name joke here. Oh, did I actually just read that? Look, okay, right, I'm back. I'm going to be judging Wood Coaster this time, which is in China somewhere. Anyway, this POV judging request was requested by the legendary guy that is Ollie SM. If you like nerdy roller coaster things, check out his Instagram. Yeah, he's got an Instagram. So Wood Coaster at Night Valley is in China and it is built by Great Coasters International. This is probably one of their finest works. I am aware of it. I've probably seen bits of the POV at some point, but you know what? That doesn't matter because I'm still gonna milk it. I'm gonna have to say again, I'm making this, I guess, series of videos now because people say don't judge a roller coaster by its POV, and well, I'm just rebellious, so I'm gonna do it. So as usual, I'm gonna watch it and give my real-time first reaction, although it's not my first reaction because I've probably seen it before at some point. But anyway, I'm gonna give that first reaction. Then I'm gonna go through and watch it a few more times like the absolute nerd that I am, and then come back and give a somewhat decent analysis of it. I hope you enjoy. So this POV is from Great Coasters International. I'm using this POV because it's a mounted POV and because it's from the manufacturer, so hopefully I don't get striked. Starting out watching it, it goes out the station. I'm going to skip this bit. Okay, so you get to the top of the lift hill and you take a bit of a right hand turn, go down, maybe bit of laterals on the top there, rising up, okay. And you're at the top of a huge valley, so you sweep down to the right and make your way round to the left again. Lots of kind of shaking GCI action. You make your way down the hill on a huge airtime drop, and then up another huge airtime hill. It's GCI. I know it's probably going to actually give airtime there. And then a few kind of turns with little airtime pops in and out. Again, just GCI stuff there. That is epic. Here we've got a few kind of pops that reverse the direction of the hill to give airtime. Another twisting moment into a turn. You kind of go around. Maybe that's a little bit of a dead spot there, but you go back into some pretty cool twisted hills. Station fly through, more twisted hills, and wow, that's just GCI all over. Lots of airtime pops, and again, just twisted airtime pops. More of the same kind of stuff. Is that bad though? Definitely not. It's GCI. Interesting tunnel, maybe getting a little bit slow, but still managing to keep the pace up decently. It's got pops of airtime, and although the train might have slowed down a bit, it's still going to be throwing you out of your seat, making your way down a bit of a slower right-hand turn now before you go into the brakes. Now, my initial reaction to that is, like I said, it's lots of GCI moments. Now, what I find with GCIs from my own experience is that even though the hills are meant to be 0G, and sometimes they're like minus 0.2 or minus 0.3, which is not that much over, it always feels a lot stronger than it actually is. And this ride has an amazing combination of all of those GCI twisted elements, lots of twisted airtime hills, lots of ways that they've really well winded it into the turns as well. What I really love is the parts where you're on a turn just normally, and then the track turns the other way to turn into an off-axis hill. I've always thought that is it's just a cool thing to do, alright? You're turning, and then suddenly you're out of your seat, turning the other way. It's cool. So that's my initial reaction. Now I'm gonna obsess over a POV for however long and give you some more in-depth thoughts. Okay, so starting from the top of the lift hill, it gives you a nice panoramic turnaround, which lets you take in the beautiful valley, the green valley. Subscribe for more valley analysis videos. Anyway, so you do get a very cool view, and after the little straight section of track, it properly starts to dive down here. When you dive down to the right, you get some mild laterals down the shallow drop, although if you are on the back, this could actually be pretty strong. You know, the laterals are going to throw you into the side quite a bit, but it really starts to get going after this first drop. It slams you hard to the left, kind of reminding me of the Ultimate for some reason. After you get pushed to the side with a bit of laterals, it lines you up for a big drop straight down the valley. And this big drop down the valley is in the shape of an airtime hill, which is cool. I mean, it might not be the best drop ever in terms of airtime, but you've already got a lot of speed going into this big drop. So because of that, it's going to feel really fast, and I think it's a very good way to start the coaster off despite not really being airtime filled or whatever. But before I do get onto the rest of the coaster, I want to talk about airtime on GCI coasters, because all the airtime moments to follow are going to be greatly impacted by this. Now this is because GCI coasters, or at least GCI coasters up to this point, are designed for all of the airtime moments to give no stronger airtime than 0G. I think it's because of things to do with the track. I'm not 100% sure on that though, but because the GCI coasters are built to go to exactly 0G, that's roughly how much all the airtime hills on this ride are going to be. Now that is going to change depending on where you're sitting in the train, but what it does create with a lot of the airtime moments on this ride is a really sudden transition into it. When you are on a roller coaster built by GCI and you go into an airtime hill, a lot of the time it is really very sudden, because there's not really a transition where you go from positives to negatives and there's kind of a smooth transition if you're going to draw a graph of force versus time. No, it goes straight into the 0G. So as soon as you stop hitting the positives, a lot of the time you're really suddenly floating out of your seat out of nowhere. Now it's this and a combination of the lap bar and the really speedy feeling of GCI overall that makes these 0G airtime hills feel a lot stronger than 0G, and they're really unexpected. You don't know when you're going to be out of your seat. It's cool. But anyway, I'm going to get on with it because I need to talk about the ride before you get bored, because you probably don't care about that. So when you get to the valley of this drop, a tiny drop to the left pushes you up into some surprisingly strong positive G-forces for a wooden coaster. And then you go up into a ginormous 0G airtime hill. Now because you have lots of speed before going into it, and it really snaps into it as I was just talking about to give you that sudden airtime. But this is where the pace is about to get crazy. As it banks down to the right, you're probably going to get some laterals, but you get thrown out of your seat as you bank upright again at the bottom of the valley before being slammed into your seat at the bottom. It then heads up the valley with some surprisingly strong positive G-forces, which you don't really see on many other GCIs. But like lots of coasters built by Great Coasters International, it has a small bump of airtime before banking to start the turn. These small airtime bumps, humps and transitions are going to be a very common theme throughout this ride. The left turn is lightly banked though for how violently it pushes you into the side of your seat when heading back down the valley. It does begin to bank a bit more as you continue lower down and speed up to get you around the turn, and just as the pace might seem to slow down because you're turning for a long time, it picks back up again. And wow, I love this next element. So just a quick recap of that last section. So after shaking about on that turn, gaining lots of speed, which you're really going to feel, the turn suddenly starts turning the other way while dropping slightly, throwing you out of your seat when you should be safely and comfortably sitting in it. This happens again under some head choppers, but it looks even stronger that time. Might not be RMC strength, but it works with how chaotic this wooden coaster is. Again, this airtime isn't meant to absolutely chuck you out of your seat. It's meant to give you chaotic, hard to predict, sudden airtime where out of nowhere you've just got no force acting on you and you're just in this rattly train floating. I can't stress how much I love that section with the two just cheeky airtime bumps where the track turns in the opposite direction. So continuing with this left turn, so when you start to go up the hill, you snap back the other way, and the track still curves as it's banking to throw you into the side of your train. There's some cool laterals during this transition. Airtime is also present, especially towards the end, but if you look off ride, and I know this is a POV judging video, but shut up, it's a really crazy snap for a wooden coaster. By snap, I just mean how quickly the banking switches to the other direction. But then the turn suddenly kicks in and you head back down again. If I was being super mean, I could maybe say the pace of the ride is let down a tiny bit here, but just because it's made out of wood, it's still going to feel alive, even if there's a brief moment of mild forces. Having said that though, you need a little bit of a break to let that last non-stop section of the ride sink in a little bit before you just blast people with more relentless, non-stop roller coastering. It's going to feel just as crazy, or if not crazier, when it starts again. So you then bank lightly to the left so that you can then get some airtime on a transition to bank to the right, and then you get more time as you level off going into the station. And leveling off into the station also gives the ride another opportunity to take your bum off that seat. These station fly-throughs do add a feeling of speed as you suddenly back where you started, whooshing past a load of wooden people. But then as you exit the station and dip out, of course you get another small pop of airtime, but it doesn't seem as long or even as strong as the pop on the way in. On the way you bank and head under a head chopper, so you can suddenly go from flying and twisting through the air with your head about to hit some metal to you being pushed into your seat and shaking around. But this is wood coaster, so that can't last too long. You immediately straighten up with another small airtime hill. Although this airtime hill might look small, the airtime is actually sustained for quite a while. Love that great section of lots of small airtime hills. Although they're meant to be 0G, like I said in the past, they're definitely going to feel more than that, and some of them look like more than that, but I'm not really going to comment on it. But it is kind of hard to tell. So now you start to head up the valley a bit again, but of course there's no other way to do that on this coaster than with an airtime hump in the middle. I repeat myself a lot in these videos, but these really do keep the ride feeling alive, as you never know when you're going to be suddenly floating out of your seat and then slammed back into it. This is made even better because the positives look like they have a tiny spike just before you're thrown out of the seat. What I'm saying here is it looks like just before you start the airtime, you get punched into your seat with even more force before flying up out of it and then landing heavily again when you go into the turn. This is really tiny detail I'm looking at from a POV, so it might not even do this. Maybe I'm just seeing the camera bump around or something, but it just looked like the track bumps upwards just before hitting that airtime. This turn could possibly be a little bit lackluster compared to the others, but GCI manages to keep it overwhelming with a twist of airtime on the way back down, and this is where the end of the ride really begins. In a coaster ending, I look for something that concludes the coaster by taking all of the best bits that have come before and putting them together in a slightly better way than previously, so it surprises you when it's even more insane than it was in the past. I think this next section does that perfectly. It looks like the ending of an RMC, so that is cool. So we've got a small airtime hill, followed by another small airtime hill, banking slightly, turning right and hitting another twisting airtime hill, followed by a small left turn into an off-axis airtime hill, into a tunnel. I could ramble on about this section, but it's another great chain of airtime and laterals and speed. Now, I said it was a good way to end the coaster because it almost feels like the coaster ends there, really. The next part of the coaster after this looks a lot slower, probably because you're not entangled in a mess of wooden track as much, but it's still going to feel slower even if the forces are the same as what was before. Anyway, you go into a tunnel, which is cool, and you're now onto the bit which is the end, but not as good as the bit which I said should be the end. Anyway. So we have another airtime hill, maybe a bit less positives into it than some of the others. This hill feels like maybe your bum might not leave the seat, but I don't know. The next hill is an off-axis version of the same thing. Looks like it would be better if it was smaller to keep more pace, as you've now lost a lot of the speed. But anyway, you drop down and land back on your seat by getting flung to the side by the lightly banked turn, bringing you into the brakes. This final bit might not be as good as the ending I said should be the ending, because you don't fly into the brakes after a really insane section of the coaster, but it doesn't leave you craving more because that previous section satisfies that craving. So I guess you could call it a little bonus section, but actually when you look at this section off-ride, it does look like it's going very slowly, so maybe it's just something to do with the POV. So that is Wood Coaster, an absolute banger. Oh, cringe. So that is Wood Coaster, an absolute banger of a roller coaster in China. Fantastic pace, airtime and speed. If I was going to rank it based off that on the Captain Coaster website rankings, which ranks roller coasters based off lists people put in, I would put it at number 7, just below Iron Rattler in between Red Fire. Now that's a very high ranking. There's a few below it that I think might be better, but the majority of them just below it I think are worse. I don't think it's better than Dino Condor or RMC Raptors. But anyway, that was me judging Wood Coaster from its POV. Next time I make a video, hopefully it doesn't take 4 weeks, and I can tell you it's not going to be a POV judging video. If you haven't already subscribed, it's cool. Maybe I'll hit 1k sometime. Anyway, thanks for watching, and bye.